let's talk about the WNBA and the league's demise now that Caitlin Clark is no longer going to play this season. The WNBA and the Indiana Fever, Stephanie White, Amber Cox, all the way up and including, let's just keep it real, Kathy Engelbert, Adam Silver, the National Basketball Association, everybody that participated in the fall.
The WNBA is facing its worst nightmare yet, as Caitlin Clark, the one player carrying the league on her back, is officially done for the season. And make no mistake, this isn't just about an injury. This is about the collapse of an entire business model built entirely on her shoulders. We're talking about the Indiana Fever, Stephanie White, Amber Cox, Kathy Engelbert, and Adam Silver. Every single executive tied to this league. All of them are now under fire because Caitlin Clark's body broke down after months of brutal hits, ignored fouls, and relentless targeting that fans witnessed with their own eyes while officials chose to look the other way. The result is nothing short of a league-wide disaster. Fans are furious, demanding answers, refunds, and even threatening boycotts, while the league remains silent. And the question everyone is asking is simple. How did the WNBA allow its brightest star to crumble in just 13 games? And what does the commissioner have to say now that the golden goose of women's basketball is sidelined, leaving the entire season hanging by a thread?
Caitlin Clark, out for the remainder of the 2025 season, something we all think we knew was coming after what Stephanie White said earlier today. We couldn't be too sure until we see it for ourselves. And with this announcement from the GOAT's mouth herself, Caitlin Clark won't be returning this season, nor if the Indiana Fever make.
Caitlin Clark's season isn't just over. It's over in the most devastating way possible. What began as a simple quad strain back in May spiraled into recurring groin issues through June and July, before collapsing entirely with a brutal bone bruise in August. Her body broke down piece by piece under relentless contact. And this isn't just a personal tragedy, it's a league-wide catastrophe. The one player who single-handedly packed arenas and pushed television ratings higher than the WNBA had ever seen is now gone. Fans aren't merely disappointed, they're furious. They're demanding refunds, calling for boycotts, and flooding social media with outrage because they watched it unfold in real time. They saw Clark shoved off screens, grabbed by the jersey and hammered on cuts, while night after night, referees stood silent, swallowing their whistles, leaving the face of the league to endure punishment that would never be tolerated in any other sport. Now the bill has come due. Clark is out for the rest of 2025. The Fever left gutted. And the WNBA was exposed for allowing its brightest star to collapse before our very eyes.
It all started last year, in her rookie season, where she received 20% of all the flagrant fouls in the league. And most of them came from Angel Reese in the Chicago Sky. And these weren't basketball plays. They were not only fouling her, but they were getting up, laughing about it, laughing about Caitlin Clark getting assaulted. Any other work environment, people go to jail for
What makes this disaster even worse is the undeniable pattern that built up game after game. This wasn't one isolated play. This wasn't one overly physical team. This was the entire league taking liberties with Caitlin Clark. Possession after possession, she was double-teamed before she even touched the ball, shoved into defenders and knocked off balance. And instead of protecting her, the referees let it happen. It got so blatant that even the Washington Post put it in writing, calling out the obvious targeting that everyone in the arena could see. The most painful part for fans wasn't just the fouls, it was the laughter. Opponents hammering Clark to the floor, then standing over her and mocking her. Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky leading the charge with plays that barely resembled basketball. Clark taking hit after hit, and players laughing about it while the officials swallowed their whistles. If that happened in any workplace outside of sports, someone would be facing criminal charges. Yet in the WNBA, the very player responsible for half the league's rating spike was left completely unprotected. Night after night, city after city, Las Vegas, New York, Dallas, Clark filled arenas, drove record attendance, and delivered television audiences the league had never seen. But instead of treating her like the investment she was, the WNBA acted as if she were just another rookie, ignoring the fact that every broadcast deal, every sponsorship check, and every record-breaking crowd was tied directly to Caitlin Clark's name. And still, officials refused to give her the most basic calls that stars in every other league receive every single night. Notice how much of it was just Caitlin Clark. Clark was taking all the hits. Clark was taking all the abuse. But this year they added Sophie Cunningham, and she now draws more flagrant fouls than almost anyone in the league, right behind Clark and Aaliyah Boston. She's been taking punishment too. The worst part is the consistency. Flagrant fouls aren't called. Most of the time, Clark can be held for an entire game without a single whistle. No flagrant fouls. No common fouls. Nothing. And this wasn't just frustrating to watch, it was downright dangerous. Because those constant cheap shots don't just make a player sore. They pile up. They grind on muscles already strained. And that's exactly how Clark's body unraveled. Her quad tightening in May, her groin burning through June, and finally, her body giving out in July. None of it is a mystery. All of it is the predictable result of being battered night after night without protection. Every twisted landing. Every denied cut. Every uncalled shove. Each one pushing her closer to the breaking point. And still, she was forced to play through it all. Empty arenas weren't an option. Tickets had been sold. Broadcasts were locked in. Sponsors demanded she be on the floor. But by then it wasn't just Clark. Sophie Cunningham was enduring the same punishment, absorbing more flagrant fouls than almost anyone else in the league, right alongside Boston. And still, the whistles never came. Fans saw it. They knew it. They called it what it was: hypocrisy. Because while the league was more than happy to cash in on Clark's name, selling out games, moving merchandise, and landing massive sponsorships, they refused to give her even the most basic respect that stars in every other sport automatically receive. And that's how a promising season turned into a slow-motion disaster everyone saw coming. The hypocrisy couldn't be clearer. On one hand, the WNBA paraded record sales, sold-out arenas, and huge sponsorships, all riding on Clark's back. On the other, they treated her like just another rookie, leaving her to get hammered possession after possession without protection. The result wasn't just unfair games. It was an entire season put at risk. A league put in jeopardy. Because when you let the face of your sport get battered, you're not just risking one player's health, you're threatening the entire future, and fans felt that betrayal deeply. They saw Clark filling arenas from New York to Chicago to Las Vegas. They saw her sell out road games in NBA-sized venues. They saw her become the literal engine of growth. And yet every night, referees refused to grant her the superstar whistles that are automatic in every other league. Instead, bodies were flying into her cuts, defenders hand-checking her out of space, stopping her movement before plays even began. What should have been a golden opportunity to elevate women's basketball was squandered, thrown away by negligence and greed. And the result was devastating. The very player carrying the sport was broken on the sideline, while the league's credibility collapsed right alongside her season. Caitlin Clark's game is unlike anything the WNBA has ever seen. That's why this disaster stings so much. Her style isn't just good basketball, it's electric. It's magnetic. It makes every possession feel like a highlight reel. She's got the deep range of Steph Curry, the confidence of Kobe Bryant, and the flair that pulls fans in. People respond to that in a way they never did with anyone else. Yes, legends like Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi paved the way. But Clark brought something different, a rare combination of skill, personality, and showmanship that resonated with audiences far beyond the traditional WNBA base. And that's why her absence isn't just a setback, it's a collapse. Because the league desperately needed her to keep casual fans hooked, networks invested, and arenas packed. Instead, they left her exposed, mocked, and targeted until her body finally broke down. And now, the very thing that made the league relevant is gone, leaving fans angry, betrayed, and convinced the WNBA has no idea how to protect its most valuable player. What makes this collapse even more infuriating is that it wasn't a freak accident. It was the direct result of negligence. Night after night, referees allowed Clark to be hacked, shoved, and battered without consequence. And those no calls piled up until her body simply couldn't take it anymore. The proof was right there for everyone to see. grimacing through cuts that came up short, losing the explosive first step that defined her drives, clearly laboring on the floor. Yet instead of stepping in to protect her, the league doubled down, pushing her into back-to-back games, constant travel, and heavy minutes just to keep ticket sales alive. In the end, that greed guaranteed the worst-case scenario: Clark's season-ending collapse. And now, the blame isn't just bad luck. It's on a league that refused to value its stars' health over short-term profit. The truth is clear. This wasn't an accident. It was a ticking time bomb the WNBA chose to ignore until it finally exploded. When the moment came to address the disaster, fans hoped for accountability, for leadership, for someone at the top to admit failure and promise change. Instead, Commissioner Kathy Engelbert delivered a hollow, sanitized statement that sounded more like a corporate press release than a human response. She spoke in vague optimism about growth and expansion, while completely ignoring the reality everyone could see: that Caitlin Clark had been targeted night after night, that referees failed to do their jobs, and that the league's refusal to step in directly contributed to her collapse. The silence on those issues was deafening. Fans weren't asking for polished sound bites. They wanted accountability. They wanted protection. They wanted to hear the words, "We failed and we will fix this." Instead, they got profit talk, ticket sales talk, and revenue talk. And in that moment, it became painfully obvious the WNBA cared more about its image than about the health of the player who made that image possible. The backlash was instant and brutal. Fans weren't just disappointed, they were furious. Ticket prices for once sold-out games collapsed on the resale market. All-Star Weekend in Indiana, meant to be Clark's grand showcase, turned into a hollow event as angry fans demanded refunds. Arenas that had been packed just weeks earlier suddenly sat half-empty. Television networks that gambled primetime slots on Clark's star power watched ratings nosedive. Sponsors who paid big money for the Clark effect suddenly found themselves tied to games nobody cared to watch. What began as frustration over injuries erupted into a full-blown movement. Fans organized boycotts, canceled tickets, and flooded social media with outrage, realizing they weren't just being sold basketball. They were being sold false hope, strung along with day-to-day injury labels insiders already knew were lies. The trust that took one rookie season to build evaporated in a matter of weeks, leaving the WNBA staring at a financial and reputational collapse of its own making. All because it failed to protect the one player carrying the entire sport. Now the WNBA faces the consequences of its own failures. Caitlin Clark's season didn't end by chance. It ended because the league refused to protect her, refused to call fouls, and refused to value her health over short-term profit. And in doing so, broke the trust of the very fans who kept it alive. And that damage may be harder to repair than any injury. Because fans aren't asking for hype anymore, they're demanding accountability. They want referees held responsible. They want leadership that protects players instead of selling them out. And until that happens, boycotts will grow louder, ratings will keep falling, and the league's credibility will continue to crumble. Caitlin Clark will come back stronger. Her legacy is far from over. But the question now is whether the WNBA itself will survive the storm it created. Because once you lose the trust of your fans, once you show them profit matters more than player safety, there may not be a second chance to earn it back.